Non-Shuangwen Brainless don't Disturb+Zombie Apocalypse+No Mutation+Power Formation+Interpersonal Relations+Civilization Reconstruction. I am a street-fighting online writer who has made a lot of preparations to write this book. But I knew the book was finished before it even started, because when I was ready to write it seriously, the truth in the book was that the end of the zombies had come. Chapter 1. Apocalypse of Zombies. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Humanity always goes further and further on the path of destruction. Shortly after the end of the global pandemic for 3 consecutive years, a new epidemic suddenly struck, directly ushering humanity into the apocalyptic era. In a rental house in a residential area on the border of Shishir Second Ring Road, Cheng struggled to get out of bed. The continuous high fever for several days has made Cheng's mouth dry and his tongue dry, and there is still an undeniable smell of decay in the room. It's because the curtains have been kept open, and there's also a lot of garbage piled up at the foot of the bed. Cheng didn't have the energy to handle these things, he just sat quietly in bed, daydreaming. After a moment, when his energy had slightly recovered, Cheng began to observe everything in the room. Firstly, the bucket has dried up, and secondly, there is not much food left. Long periods of bedridden illness left Cheng extremely weak and in urgent need of food supplementation. But Cheng's throat hurts a lot and he really doesn't have an appetite to eat. I could only moisten my throat with a little saliva first, while Cheng recalled the origin of this incident in a daze. Everything happened a few months ago, and compared to the previous epidemic, the situation this time is clearly more serious. The speed of transmission is faster, the scope is wider, and the characteristics exhibited by infected patients are also extremely eerie. Cheng doesn't know how long this situation will last, but before it all ends, being alive is a question that Cheng must consider. Reluctantly recovering some physical strength, Cheng walked to the window and pulled open the curtains to take a look down. At a height of 10 floors, a large number of infected individuals can be seen wandering on the open space of the community. Occasionally looking around, trying to find living creatures that can satisfy the desire to devour. Devouring desire, that's right, this is the characteristic exhibited by those infected with the new epidemic. Extremely aggressive and a desire to devour living organisms. Just like the zombies in the novel. Cheng has not had close contact with these infected individuals, but he has seen more than one scene of them going crazy. Since witnessing these infected individuals tearing survivors to pieces with his own eyes, Cheng no longer dares to treat these infected individuals like his own. After a long silence, Cheng sat back on the bed. With these infected individuals present, wanting to go out has become a luxury. Fortunately, at the beginning of the epidemic, the authorities organized a large-scale quarantine based on previous experience. This has given many people a chance to survive, but food and supplies are still issues that all survivors must face. Fortunately, the common people have also gained experience and prepared a large amount of materials in the early stages of the epidemic outbreak. With the official subsidies provided, it can also support for a long time. But everything happened too quickly. The virus mutated multiple times in a very short time, and then it became the current situation. The larger the group of people, the faster they will fall into this virus's spread. First is the hospital, then the military, and then a large number of volunteers. Many infected individuals on the streets are wearing isolation suits, and no one can remain isolated after the outbreak of riots. Cheng let out a faint sigh, unsure if his previous fever was a form of infection. But since we have survived, we will inevitably live longer in the future. Cheng carefully selected some food that could be swallowed and chewed slowly, while pondering ways to break through the situation. In the current situation, it is somewhat unrealistic to leave residential buildings and go to areas with abundant resources. But in the same residential building, with 25 floors up and down and at least 5 or 6 rooms on each floor, it is a chance for high success. As long as he can pry open the door lock, Cheng can search for possible living supplies in the room. But we have to face the possible infected individuals inside, as well as those who still have dead and alive people. Fortunately, before Gao Cheng fell into a coma due to a high fever, some people had to leave their rooms due to a shortage of supplies. Many people left the city from the beginning, either returning to their hometowns or simply venturing into the deep mountains and forests. Gao Cheng's neighbor is such a family that left from the beginning of the epidemic. Due to social anxiety, Gao Cheng is not familiar with this family, but he has no psychological burden to pry open the door lock of this family. At the worst, you can find something to drink. I haven't heard of anyone who would finish drinking all the water at home when they go out. And there is still a lot of time in the future, and Gao Cheng will inevitably leave his room, even this city. This time, let's consider it as accumulating experience. The train of thought gradually became clear, and Gao Cheng stood up from the bed. Besides having a dry throat, my physical strength has already recovered quite a bit. The rooms in residential buildings are densely distributed, so theoretically there will be no shortage of infected individuals. But most of them are sealed in rooms, and the height of a 10-story building generally does not gather too many infected individuals. As long as there are no infected individuals in the hallway, or even if the number of infected individuals is not high, there is a chance for high achievement to break the deadlock. With a plan in mind, Gao Cheng quickly found a relatively handy weapon at home. It's a wrench. The quality of equipment in rental houses is generally poor, and in order to save costs, there is a lot of tinkering. Now it is useful, so as not to be helpless in case of unexpected situations. There is still a kitchen knife in the kitchen, but let's not talk about whether it will be useful if we turn around. Gao Cheng is currently facing an infected person like a zombie. The kitchen knife is sharp enough, but with high experience, it may not be able to quickly remove the infected person. Blunt weapons are different. Even if the damage is not fatal enough, the immense power can still cause the zombie to experience some shaking. In addition, Gao Cheng also prepared some ropes to reinforce the entrance of the safety passage. A safe passage is a passage leading up and down stairs, which is usually open and has a door. But the quality is not up to standard, and even under the push of infected individuals, it cannot last for too long. So reinforcement is necessary, but currently there is no better material available for Gao Cheng. Now it can only be like this, and even if it's just a rope, it can last for a while longer after the door lock is knocked open. In this way, Gao Cheng can return to his room in a timely manner. With his relatively sturdy anti-theft door, Gao Cheng can still be his shrinking head turtle. But as long as the high success plan is successful, a relatively safe enclosed space will be formed after the safety passage is closed. In this space, Gao Cheng can make some bold attempts, such as forcefully prying locks. However, this is also a later point, as it may attract the attention of infected individuals. Gao Cheng had a headache and fantasized that it might be better to have a companion at this time. But I can only think about it. It was already noon, and Gao Cheng quickly got ready. Afterwards, he walked straight to the door and nervously opened it. Chapter 2. Getting out of the room. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The plan was originally quite good, but suddenly a stubborn voice startled Gao Cheng. It's the hinge of the door, and prolonged use has caused wear and tear on the hinge. The previous situation was not very serious, and I don't know what happened this time. Suddenly, the sound became much louder. The sudden sound shattered the tranquility, and if there were infected individuals around, they would inevitably be attracted by such movements. Fortunately, before opening the door, Gao Cheng peeked through the cat's eyes behind the door for a long time. Except for the blind spot at the corner of the corridor, there were no infected individuals in the straight corridor with a total length of nearly 20 meters. A moment passed without any infected individuals appearing, and Gao Cheng slowly let go of his worries. It should be that there are no infected individuals nearby. However, Gao Cheng was not careless either. He did not close the door and was prepared to escape at any time. Following closely towards the first corner, as long as the door can be closed, the rest is easy to say. This is a safe passage leading to the upper and lower stairs, as well as the area where the water pipes and power grid compartments on the current floor are located. There is another corner not far away, which is the elevator door and another safe passage. Both channels may have infected individuals, but Gao Cheng currently only has one person and can only focus on the one that is slightly closer. I took out a small mirror from my pocket, which can be used to observe the situation behind the corner. This is what Gao Cheng learned from movies. The image in the mirror also relieved Gao Cheng, as there was no danger involved. The door of the passage is also open, just like before. Gao Cheng hurriedly stepped forward, closed the door, locked it, and tightly tied it with ropes for reinforcement. Only when the rope was tied with one dead knot after another, did Gao Cheng finally relax. It seems to be going smoothly, just close the other door next. Without wasting time, Gao Cheng walked directly towards the position of another door. We need to go around a corner, which is also the location of the elevator shaft. There is no electricity now, and the elevator cannot be used. The infected person is also unlikely to climb up from the elevator shaft, so there should be no need to dispose of it temporarily. Just as Gao Cheng was about to turn the corner, a slight sobbing sound suddenly appeared, making the distracted Gao Cheng instantly alert. This didn't seem like a noise that ordinary people would make, but as expected, during the moment when Gao Cheng paused, a pale-faced figure had already circled around the corner. The footsteps stumbled, and there was not much energy between the eyes. It is an infected person. Just one eye contact, the infected person rushed towards Gao Cheng like crazy. The speed is not slow, but fortunately it can still handle it. In fact, in the early stages of a virus outbreak, infected individuals are faster and more aggressive. However, as time went on, the speed of infected individuals gradually slowed down for unknown reasons. Occasionally, there may be very fast ones, but they are still a minority. This is also the reason why Gao Cheng dared to leave the room. But even so, he had to fight back, Gao Cheng urged himself in his heart. But even though he had already been mentally prepared before, when it came to this point, Gao Cheng couldn't help but tremble. The infected person on the opposite side is a middle-aged woman wearing the clothes of a cleaner, who should be the janitor in the community. Large-scale isolation also requires someone to do basic work. Such people may not be selfless, but they are definitely at the bottom of society. Just like Gao Cheng. Faced with such an opponent, Gao Cheng is really unable to take action. Actually, it's not just about high success, most people should have similar reactions. But this matter is a matter of life and death. As soon as the infected person arrived, both hands were about to be placed on Gao Cheng's shoulders. Gao Cheng dared not think much, gritted his teeth and turned the wrench in his hand, fiercely smashing it towards the infected person in front of him. A muffled thud. If it were an ordinary person, just this one might be knocked down. But the infected person in front of them did not show any obvious reaction. Just a little more depression on the head, then slowly adjusted his posture and pounced towards Gao Cheng. Gao Cheng stared blankly at all of this and couldn't help but curse and wipe. At the next moment, Gao Cheng, whose desire for survival skyrocketed, kicked the infected person in the chest, causing them to stumble backwards. Then he followed closely, and Gao Cheng pressed the infected person under him, continuously lifting and smashing the wrench in his hand 1, 2, 3. Until the infected person under him stopped moving, Gao Cheng stumbled back. Directly fell and sat on the ground. The wrench was casually thrown aside, with fear and excitement intertwined, causing Gao Cheng to tremble uncontrollably and almost vomit. But Gao Cheng quickly realized a problem. Such a big commotion is bound to attract more attention from infected individuals. The other door is still open, and if infected individuals rush in, the consequences would be unimaginable. Gao Cheng dared not delay and quickly got up and rushed towards the position of another door. Sure enough, before rushing to the door, I heard chaotic sobs and stumbling footsteps. There are more infected individuals, probably attracted by the recent commotion. Gao Cheng felt a little relieved and quickly stepped forward to close the door and lock it, then reinforced it with a rope. It wasn't until Gao Cheng finished all of this that the infected person's footsteps and sobs approached. "It's right behind the door." Some infected individuals attempted to push wooden doors, while others climbed towards higher floors. But fortunately, Gao Cheng did not create any greater commotion, and the infected person did not pay attention to this place for too long. After all the commotion disappeared, Gao Cheng finally breathed a sigh of relief, sitting on the ground in a somewhat disheveled state. However, be careful with your movements to prevent the infected person from paying attention again. Not all the infected individuals have left, and if there is any further commotion, Gao Cheng is uncertain whether the matter will end so easily. Fortunately, it is safe now. Gao Cheng slowly adjusted his mindset, while a bitter smile couldn't help but hang from the corner of his mouth. It's too exciting. Before Gao Cheng could react, he suddenly felt like something had added to his face. Subconsciously wiping it, it suddenly froze in mid-air again. Because I realized what would be on my face. I didn't dare to be careless, so I quickly became more careful. Do not let these things touch the orifices such as the mouth and nostrils, and wipe them carefully. It wasn't until I finally couldn't feel anything unusual on my face that I finally felt relieved. Hurry back to the original place, pick up the mirror on the ground and carefully examine it. It's the blood of the infected person, it should have accidentally splashed up from the few hits just now. Fortunately, Gao Cheng's attack was not particularly fierce and did not blow the opponent's head out. Otherwise, it would just splash out, and Gao Cheng might have been covered by this blood stain. The blood of an infected person is definitely a source of virus infection. Gao Cheng dare not let this blood touch his mouth, nostrils, and other places. Next, it needs to be cleaned carefully, but before that, there is also a prerequisite, which is to pry open the neighbor's door and see if you can find some useful things inside. Especially clean water sources. Chapter 3. Locking and Drones. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When it comes to prying locks, Gao Cheng is not an expert either. The closest time to prying a lock was when the door lock in the bedroom was broken, and we had to call a locksmith to come over. At that time, the lock was completely removed, and now it is still placed in the drawer of the living room. Using this experience, Gao Cheng also gained a general understanding of the structure of the door lock and how to remove it. Fortunately, metal anti-theft doors are not popular in this place, otherwise it would be even more troublesome. After being busy for 2 hours, we finally reached the final step. In fact, it won't take such a long time, just try to avoid making too much noise as much as possible. Occasionally, 1 or 2 heavy blows did not attract the attention of the infected person, or if the attention was not long, they gradually quieted down. 2 hours later, all the tools were spread out. With a loud crash, the core component fell to the ground. It's a bit crisp, but it also means that the last protection of the door has been broken. Just in case, Gao Cheng went to the safe passage to check. Make sure the door hasn't been knocked open, then turn back again. I walked into the room with some anticipation and saw the water dispenser in the corner of the living room at a glance. Approximately 10 liters of capacity, with at least half remaining. I have been extremely thirsty since I woke up, and now it has been half a day. Without any other thoughts at the moment, he ran to the edge of the water dispenser, picked up the bucket, and started drinking with a thud. When the dampness seeped into the spleen and lungs, Gao Cheng relaxed his whole body. Having found a spot on the sofa, Gao Cheng sat directly on it. Shu Tan. Gao Cheng's mouth couldn't help but smile. Then he placed the bucket next to him and collapsed on the sofa, surveying the unfamiliar environment. The living room is not spacious, but the decoration is very cozy. If it weren't for this disaster, a family of 3 would probably have lived here for a long time. But everything has changed, and it's even unknown whether this family of 3 is still alive or not. Gao Cheng was a bit dazed for a while, never thinking that he would do such a thing, and never even thought that he could really pry open that door lock. But since it has already been done, the remaining rooms must not be let go. With this experience, the following process will always be easier. Gao Cheng breathed a sigh of relief and ended his brief leisure time. Perhaps this family will come back in the future, and perhaps others will become the owners of this room. But now we can't afford to worry too much. Collecting all the useful things in the room and increasing our own survival costs is the most important thing at the moment. Gao Cheng quickly found some food in the refrigerator, with meat and vegetables, but it had already decayed. In the absence of electricity, this refrigerator only serves as a storage device. Gao Cheng was somewhat disappointed, but soon found new food. In the kitchen, some rice and instant noodles are neatly stacked in the cabinet. You can see the delicacy of this family, in addition to some seasonings such as oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar. If a fire can be started, these things can quickly make a dinner. In particular, there are some rice sausage beside the instant noodles, which makes Gao Cheng swallow saliva. But in the end, I held back and had to carefully allocate these things for as long as possible. The sun has already set in the west, and the sky is about to darken. Next, we need to take these things home as soon as possible. Gao Cheng's speed is very fast, and he has already moved all the large items in just a few minutes. In fact, there wasn't much either. Just as Gao Cheng was thinking about whether to look for other useful things in the room after moving these things, a corner of his eye suddenly alerted him. Outside the window of the living room, a fist-sized drone was floating there. When Gao Cheng turned his head to look over, the drone disappeared into place in an instant. It's not an illusion, it's because the speed of the drone is too fast. Gao Cheng quickly dropped his belongings and took a few steps to run to the window. He opened the window and poked his head out, trying to find the trace of the drone. But the drone disappeared like this. Gao Cheng frowned slightly. In Gao Cheng's understanding, if there is no water or electricity, there will be a disaster of the end, and humanity should return to the primitive world. But at the moment of seeing the drone, Gao Chengkai suddenly realized that in today's society, it seems that not everyone can only return to the primitive like himself. Regardless of the identity of the person behind the scenes, Gao Chengdu has now been targeted by the other party. The other party is in the dark, Gao Cheng is in the light, and Gao Cheng must be careful. After a brief pause, Gao Cheng closed the window and drew the curtains. Then he returned to the room with his last supplies. The curtains at home were also closed, the door was locked, and I only hoped that the drone would not appear around me again. As for the things left at the neighbor's house, we'll talk about them when we have time. Also, we need to find a way to dispose of the body in the hallway. The simplest way is to throw it downstairs, but it can still be a bit troublesome for someone who is infected. Sitting on the sofa in his living room, Gao Cheng pondered his next plan. There should be no problem in the short term. Apart from the neighbor's house, there are 3 more rooms on this floor. Relying on the supplies in these rooms should be able to support for a period of time, but it will definitely not be too long. We must find ways to gather more floors, and even consider leaving residential buildings and going outside. It's just that there are infected people everywhere now, and it's not easy for Gao Cheng to create such a relatively enclosed space. Going out is no different from dying. Gao Cheng sighed impatiently, feeling a bit hopeless on his future path. At this moment, clanging clang clang, a sudden sound of glass tapping woke Gao Cheng up. It was the drone, and Gao Cheng immediately guessed the source of the sound. I thought the other person wouldn't guess that I would be in this room, but now it is obvious that the other party knows their situation very well. Do you want to pretend to be dead? Gao Cheng hesitated a bit. Dang dang dang, the knocking continues. Gao Cheng frowned slightly, while also feeling a bit curious. How did the other party charge this drone? It's impossible that the drone was fully charged before and has been waiting until now. If there is no way to charge it, the drone may have run out of battery long ago. After a moment of silence, Gao Cheng finally decided to step forward and pull open a corner of the curtain. Sure enough, I saw the same drone as before, now hovering outside the window. The only difference from before is that this time there is an additional item on the drone. It's a piece of paper. Seeing Gao Cheng pull open the curtains, the drone also approached slightly under the control of the person behind the scenes. So that Gao Cheng could read the content written on the paper clearly. Big brother, do you still have anything to eat? Chapter 4. Hungry Young People. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking at the content on the paper, Gao Cheng froze for a moment. Did you overthink it yourself? Having drones doesn't necessarily mean they're just that advanced. Of course, the other party may also be pretending. After hesitating for a moment, Gao Cheng turned around and returned to his room, taking out a pack of instant noodles from the spoils of war just now. Although there is only one package, it is enough. Moreover, Gao Cheng was not so kind. He walked to the door and shook at the other person, but did not intend to give the instant noodles out. But the operator of the drone seemed to be unaware of Gao Cheng's thoughts and was clearly excited. The drone swayed in the air under the control of the other party. However, there was no communication channel between the two sides, and even if the drone had a way to collect sound and images, Gao Cheng could not hear the voices from the opposite side. So after the other party noticed the problem, the drone quickly flew upwards and there was no movement in the blink of an eye. Gao Cheng quickly opened the window and poked his head out, but did not see any trace of the drone. But at least it can be confirmed that the other party should be upstairs, and it doesn't look very high. So Gao Cheng did not leave the window and waited by the window, waiting for the drone to return. Sure enough, the drone underwent a simple modification and reappeared outside the window. With an additional small pod made of bamboo material, it doesn't look very heavy. Gao Cheng thought that the other party wanted him to put instant noodles inside, and this insincere action made him almost want to turn around and leave. But the next moment I saw the headphones in the pod, it seemed that the other person wanted to have a good conversation with Gao Cheng. After hesitating for a moment, Gao Cheng took out the headphones from the pod and put them on his ears. After a piercing sound, a slightly immature voice sounded. "Hello, can you hear me?" Gao Cheng was taken aback for a moment. He was still a young man. For a moment, Gao Cheng's tone was somewhat curious and he asked, "Do you have electricity there?" This is the most concerning issue for Gao Cheng. With electricity, there may be a network, and with the network, there may be contact with the outside world. The power outage and disconnection from the outside world were the main reasons for Gao Cheng's emotional tension, even before he became infected and unconscious. If we can establish contact with the outside world, and if we are lucky enough, the government can still maintain basic operations, then there is room for a turnaround. But the answer from the other side poured cold water on Gao Cheng. "I have a mobile power supply for camping here, which can charge drones. But I've already used it almost, and I dare not use it too recklessly during this period." Gao Cheng's heart sank as he realized that things were not that simple. After another moment of silence, Gao Cheng asked, "Can your power be charged? Also, can you get in touch with the outside world?" Under normal circumstances, even without human maintenance, a city's power network should not be paralyzed so quickly. Although the chaos has been ongoing for some time, electricity and water have also been cut off a long time ago. There must be a problem between this. The young man felt a little uneasy and said, "Sorry. I think it's because I'm worried that Gao Cheng's demands won't be met and I might refuse to provide food." Gao Cheng fell silent, seemingly completely isolated. Seeing that Gao Cheng had no movement, the young man felt a bit nervous for a moment. "Big brother, that food, look. The reason for such cooperation is for this stuttering." Without much thought, Gao Cheng casually placed instant noodles in the basket of the opponent's drone. The weight of instant noodles is not heavy, and although drones are small, they can still bring instant noodles back to the floor where young people are located. The speed slowed down a lot this time, but it allowed Gao Cheng to see the window for the drone to return. There is not much difference, only a height of 3 floors. Moreover, the young people are probably extremely hungry and have not put on any disguise. As soon as the drone entered the window, the sound of the other person chewing the pancake was heard in their headphones. Gao Cheng was thinking of asking some other questions, but he found that without the drone, the sound could not be transmitted. After hesitating for a moment, I temporarily gave up communication. Close the window again, draw the curtains, and enclose yourself in this small space. The intersection with the other party will not end like this, and the other party cannot be satisfied with just a pack of instant noodles. It's already dark, without the neon lights shining, this city is like a dark cage. Everywhere is the silhouette of black holes, and I don't know what kind of danger is hidden. I don't know how many survivors died on such a night. Gao Cheng didn't go back to the bedroom and lay down on the sofa in the living room. It's actually the same everywhere, and it's impossible to wait for news from young people in time here. The air is quiet and terrifying, only the sound of heartbeat and breathing can be heard. An extreme indifference and emptiness overwhelmed all emotions, causing Gao Cheng's eyes to gradually lose focus. Confusion and fear. Gao Cheng is just an ordinary person, and his only advantage is that he may think a little more than others. This is thanks to Gao Cheng's profession as a street-fighting internet writer. Because different plot directions need to be considered, Gao Cheng tends to think more about one thing. For example, according to the flow of the novel, the future of the apocalypse of zombies is nothing more than supernatural processes such as rebirth, mutation, and systems. But reason tells Gao Cheng that all of this is unlikely to happen. Even if there is, it should not happen to oneself. Even if all of this happened to him, Gao Cheng always had to find a way to survive before it happened. Accompanied by this directionless thought, Gao Cheng fell asleep in a daze. Originally, he had just recovered from a serious illness and had to endure many physically demanding tasks, but Gao Cheng was already feeling overwhelmed. I don't know how long I slept, but Gao Cheng was suddenly awakened by a crisp knocking sound. It came from the window. Gao Cheng didn't react for a while, his heart rate instinctively accelerated, and his emotions were a bit tense. Even if you open your eyes, there is still a thick darkness in front of you. Without a light source, the night in this world is a chaos. Fortunately, after adapting for a moment, the picture gradually added some contours. Gao Cheng also realized what this movement represented, that the young man's drone had returned. Feeling tired, Gao Cheng stood up and groped to put his headphones on his ears. At the same time, he walked to the window and opened it to let the drone fly in. The familiar sizzling sound echoed in the earphones, and the young people's voices gradually became clear. With a hint of embarrassment, he said, "Big brother, is there anything else you can drink there?" The instant noodles were a bit dry when chewed raw, and the young man hesitated for half a night before finally making a request to Gao Cheng. Chapter 5. Gao Cheng Suggestions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gao Cheng was waiting for this opportunity, but at first he didn't expect it to come so soon. Young people also know that this requirement is a bit excessive, trying to persuade them, "I have money. If you think money is not enough, I still have some valuable little things. For example, drones." Feeling a bit anxious, the young man cried and begged, "Big brother, I'm really thirsty. Just be a good person and help me to the end." Gao Cheng remained silent, and the atmosphere was somewhat oppressive. Until the end, the young man felt embarrassed to say anything more and could only wait quietly for Gao Cheng's answer. And Gao Cheng finally responded with a calm tone, "I can help you this time, but next time. Do you still expect me to keep you?" Gao Cheng helped, providing at most 1 glass of water or even 1 mineral bottle. This is not too little, but it's only enough for 1 or 2 days. The young man was a bit uneasy, "So what do you mean?" Gao Cheng came straight to the point and said, "Come down with me. As long as I have a bite to eat, I promise I won't starve you." The young man was taken aback and his tone became helpless. Big brother, there are several floors between us. Can you let me go down? Even if young people have the courage to step out of the room, they won't starve until now. Of course, it's also possible that you don't need to be hungry anymore. The wandering infected individuals in the community are constantly reminding everyone of the cruelty of this world. Gao Cheng is really on the brink of embarrassment, otherwise he wouldn't have easily left the room. But Gao Cheng insisted unusually on this requirement. We are only 3 stories apart in height. You can find something to tie up and make a rope to go down, it's not without a chance. The young man looked sad and said, "This is too dangerous, big brother. Aren't you joking? If you accidentally fall, Even if there is a risk of falling, it's just a risk," Gao Cheng urged. "What can you do while holding yourself in the room? Why don't you follow my train of thought and go out and find something to eat?" Gao Cheng showed great patience in persuading young people to come down. "I have felt before that if there were more people around me, not too many, just one, today's actions would be much smoother. Although this also means an increase in consumption, 2 people clearly have a slight advantage compared to 1 person. I have also communicated with the young person twice, and if it weren't for pretending, this young person is actually quite valuable for cultivation." The young man was very hesitant, and after speaking for so long, his throat became even drier. But he didn't dare to refuse directly, so he could only tentatively ask, "Why don't I pass the rope down and you come to me, big brother?" With a hopeful tone, "Look, I still have drones and some equipment to use here, isn't it more reliable?" Gao Cheng remained silent, and of course the young man's proposal was acceptable. The most important thing is drones. But climbing upstairs means risk for Gao Cheng. Leaving aside the difficulty of going upstairs and downstairs, Gao Cheng cannot be entirely certain that what young people show is not just disguise. "And when I really go to the other person's room, I feel somewhat cramped." Gao Cheng has also enclosed his floor in a relatively safe space, which is clearly safer than the unknown outside the young people's door. The most important thing is that Gao Cheng must take the lead in this cooperation. This is a deadly matter, we cannot be careless. So Gao Cheng's voice became somewhat indifferent. "Forget it, you can think it over for yourself. I'll help you this time, but not next time." Just now, the drone was already released. After all, only through the drone's sound reception can Gao Cheng's words be heard by the other party. Using the weak light source of the drone, Gao Cheng poured a bottle of water for the young man. The size of an ordinary mineral water bottle. If a person is really thirsty, this bottle is probably just enough. If you save a bit, it will take 2 days. Although young people are thirsty, they did not recklessly use drones to lift such a heavy object. Hanging down a rope from the window, it was tied with shoelaces or something like that, indicating that it was well prepared. Not very sturdy, but trembling finally didn't go wrong. As for the drone, it was left directly on Gao Cheng's side. The function of calling has been retained, making it convenient for 2 people to communicate. After all this tinkering, Gao Cheng didn't know how long time had passed. Unable to sleep for a moment, I decided to sit on the sofa and stare blankly at the corner of the room. Not long after, the silent headphones suddenly rang out again. "Big brother, are you still there?" Gao Cheng didn't take off his headphones just now, and it's unclear whether he's waiting for the young man's answer or for some other reason. Anyway, I used to sleep with headphones on before, so it shouldn't be a problem for a while. Watching the drone's microphone light up, Gao Cheng lazily said, "Yes, what's going on?" The young man hesitated a bit, not sure if he, like Gao Cheng, was not accustomed to the current night. After a moment, he timidly said, "Do you think we can still be saved?" Gao Cheng remained silent, and the rescue that young people were looking forward to should be attributed to the official power. Or anyone who can provide assistance. In the 3 years since the last large-scale outbreak, the country has indeed put in great effort to control the spread of the epidemic, and of course, it has been very effective. But now, looking at the infected people downstairs, it is unlikely that any organization or force can survive on such a large scale. Even if the officials still retain some strength, it is not possible to mobilize it in a short period of time. Not to mention entering the city to save trapped survivors like Gao Cheng. Gao Cheng's tone was somewhat helpless. It's impossible, you should find a way to save yourself. After a pause, he suddenly asked again, don't you have a drone? You should see more than I know. The young people did not answer, and it was precisely because of drones that they became even more desperate. Like Gao Cheng, young people have also experienced a period of infection. I just don't know if it's due to being young or some other factor. Young people need to recover from infection earlier. This is also the reason why young people consume their resources faster. High success is due to poor appetite and reduced consumption of food and drink during the time of infection, which is why more food comes out after waking up. Young people recover quickly, and of course, their appetite is also better. Even with conscious savings, after so many days have passed, there is nothing left. I have been looking forward to rescue during this period, but as time passed, this expectation gradually fell through, until today I met Gao Cheng. Chapter 6. Crisis always exists. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This infection is like a screening, and the number of people who can survive from this screening is obviously not many. Taking the floor where the young people are located as the center, there are 5 floors up and down, and during these days, only Gao Cheng is alive. Of course, there are also people who may hide in the dark, and the main focus of young people is not on this side. Even some people who are infected are treated as corpses by young people, and these actually have a chance to survive. But even so, the number of survivors will not be very high compared to the previous population size. Both young people and high-achieving individuals lack the courage to ensure that they can live well. Seeing the young man not speaking, Gao Cheng also guessed the general situation. Alright, you better think about what to do next, he said with rare relief. There's still a chance to leave the room, but if you keep holding on in the room, you'll have to wait to death. The young man suddenly felt a little excited. Big brother. Gao Cheng inexplicably disliked this title and suddenly interrupted. Calling me Gao Chengji is good, but calling me Big Brother always feels strange. He has a somewhat social phobic personality, and if it weren't for the sake of the future, Gao Cheng wouldn't have been bothering young people for so long. Young people are not sure why Gao Cheng said that, but the biggest advantage of young people is listening to advice. "Oh, my name is Yi Fan, Big Brother. No, I'll ask you to take care of me in the future, Gao Cheng." He quickly changed his tone. Gao Cheng was stunned for a moment. What does this young man mean? Feeling somewhat uncertain, Gao Cheng asked again, "Are you planning to come down?" The young man felt a little uneasy and said, "Give it a try. If it can go down, it's better than being alone." There is some uncertainty in the words, "Maybe we will regret it tomorrow." But Gao Cheng didn't insist either. It's best if someone can come down, but if they don't want to, then Gao Cheng has no choice. A trustworthy person and a person who hesitates and always questions themselves are clearly more likable than the former. Speaking was already a bit drowsy, and Gao Cheng had no intention of urging the young people. Just casually saying, "Let's talk about it tomorrow. I'm a bit tired." The exhaustion accumulated instantly struck, and Gao Chengli fell asleep like this. There is a slight snoring, indicating that I am really tired today. The young man only remained silent for a moment before hearing Gao Cheng's voice through his headphones. After a pause, "It was not easy to disturb, so I had to turn off communication and return to bed feeling uneasy. On such a night, in this city, I don't know how many people can't sleep. I don't know how many people are quietly dying." But none of this has affected Gao Cheng. The quality of the sleep this time was quite good, but there were always fragmented dreams that were intermittent. First is the familiar bustling city, followed by the plot of zombie explosions in the novel. However, in his dream, Gao Cheng did not have his current good luck, no official interference, and no quarantine measures. The outbreak of the virus directly appeared in the city, and Gao Cheng ended his life on the streets. And when the infected person threw Gao Cheng down and forcefully tore him apart, Gao Cheng finally woke up with fear from his sleep. The day was already bright, shining through the curtains into the room. With a few rapid breaths, Gao Cheng slowly regained consciousness. Observing the surroundings, it was still in my own room and the door was still secure. Gao Cheng woke up in a cold sweat, and with a night's rest, the exhaustion accumulated from the infection earlier was completely wiped away. Feeling thirsty, Gao Cheng picked up the nearby bucket and took a strong sip. But just waking up, the taste buds haven't fully opened yet. I just moistened my throat and couldn't drink anymore. Plus what was given to the young people yesterday, there is only a small half bucket of water left for Gao Cheng. If there is no new input, I'm afraid I won't be able to persist for too long. I'm used to using my phone to check the time, and I don't even have a watch at home. I don't know what time it is now. After looking at the headphones, there is still no movement. Unable to connect with young people, Gao Cheng could only focus on his own affairs for now. I ate something to cushion my stomach, and then Gao Cheng started to pry at the lock. With previous experience, this process has gone much smoother. Although it's still violent, just be effective. This time it was another neighbor of Gao Cheng, and I had the impression that it was also a rented room. But whether there is anyone living inside now, Gao Cheng doesn't know either. Because the number of encounters is indeed very small. Before Gao Cheng could finish his movements, the drone controlled by the young man appeared in the hallway. Unlike yesterday, Gao Cheng already knows the other person's identity, so he is not as nervous as yesterday. But the body of the infected person in the hallway had a great impact on the young people. One of them pried the lock on their own, while the other controlled the drone and watched it all quietly. Gao Cheng was not wearing headphones, and both sides were unable to communicate. And Gao Cheng's work quickly came to an end, and in fact, there was not much noise before. Occasionally, there was a long interval between them, so there was not much movement coming from the safe passage. An hour later, as long as the lock cylinder is knocked open, the door will be opened. But through the door lock that was knocked open, Gao Cheng remained frozen in place. There was an infected person in the room who was stumbling towards the door. For some reason, it took so long to react. Gao Cheng has been moving all along just now. If there were any infected individuals, they should have been attracted long ago under normal circumstances. The infected person is a male, about the same age as Gao Cheng. There is some blood stains on my face, as if I have nibbled on something. Gao Cheng's heart sank, and then he thought of a terrifying reality. At this moment, the infected person has also arrived recently. As if sensing Gao Cheng behind the lock hole, his speed suddenly increased by a few points and he pounced directly towards Gao Cheng. Both sides were separated by a door, and the infected person frantically knocked through a keyhole, wishing to tear Gao Cheng into pieces. Although he had yesterday's experience, Gao Cheng still felt his heart racing when he encountered this situation. Breathing is also a bit tight. The young man who controls the drone is obviously even more timid. Although he doesn't know what's going on behind the door, the thumping sound sounded, and the young man also guessed a bit. The drone trembled slightly in the air, but fortunately it quickly stabilized its movements. And Gao Cheng also frowned and suddenly looked towards the safe passage of the elevator shaft. The door lock here has not been fully pried open, but the main body is actually gone. With the beating of the infected person, this door will eventually be opened. But the biggest threat is not on this side. Although Gao Cheng has reinforced the safety channel to a certain extent, it cannot fully guarantee safety. Behind that door, there were several or even dozens of infected individuals gathered. Once you break in, the consequences are unimaginable. And the movement created by the infected person in this room caught the attention of the infected person over there. The clanging sound sounded, as if the door would be knocked open by an infected person in the next moment. Gao Cheng nervously took a few steps back and said, "Let's go back first." Chapter 7. Adventure Preparation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. By the time Gao Cheng returned to his room, the knocking sound of the door had already increased significantly. Fortunately, it was not broken in the end. As Gao Cheng moved away, the infected person gradually lost their target and became quiet. Gao Cheng's heart skipped a beat as he watched. Once an infected person rushed out of this door, even without Gao Cheng, he would still be attracted to the safe passage. At that time, both sides will echo each other from afar, and 9 out of 9, that door will be broken open. Fortunately, Gao Cheng used ropes to reinforce them over there, so even if they were hit, the sound would not be very loud. Both sides attracted each other for a long time, but in the end, they quieted down. However, after such a long period of pushing and shoving, Gao Cheng cannot determine the situation on the safe passage side. Once the reinforcement of the rope becomes loose, the consequences are equally unimaginable. Reinforcement must be carried out, and the infected individuals in the adjacent room must also be addressed. But this is not something that Gao Cheng can do as a person. No matter which side of the problem is dealt with first, the resulting noise may attract infected individuals on the other side. Moreover, there may be more than one infected person in the room, which is a highly probable guess. The marks on the face of the infected person who appeared clearly indicate that they have nibbled on flesh and blood. It's unlikely to be raw meat, so it should be roommates in the same room. Poor guy, Gao Cheng couldn't help but sigh. But ultimately, he withdrew his gaze and his face looked a bit ugly. The young man's voice rang out in his headphones, "Is that the infected person in that room?" The voice trembled, and it was probably the first time I had close contact with an infected person. Although separated by a lens and a door. Gao Cheng had no mood to joke with the young man and said, "That's right, and to be honest, there shouldn't be just one in that room." The infected person who collided with the door had injuries on their legs, which is why their movements were slow. It can be seen that when the infected person goes crazy, the target being attacked still resists a bit. The young man remained silent and wavered in his heart. I did promise to come down to help before, but now I am scared by the infected person and have become somewhat hesitant. Gao Cheng ignored the young man's reaction and continued, "I'll help you weave a rope, and you can also make some yourself. The height of a 3-story building should not be difficult." The young man hesitated, "Should we wait any longer?" Gao Cheng asked directly, "Did you eat anything today?" Even if the specific time is unknown, it is estimated that it should be noon. Last night, there was only 1 packet of instant noodles, and I ate it dry. Gao Cheng didn't believe that young people weren't hungry. At this point, it is necessary to give some pressure appropriately, otherwise if young people would rather starve than come down, then there is really no way to achieve high success. The young man eventually compromised and said, "Okay, I'll go get it done now." After speaking, the drone had already landed on the ground, and the signal from the headphones was interrupted. Gao Cheng breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, the appearance of the infected person just now also startled him. However, it is safe at last, and it should be easier for young people to come down and help with the next steps. Young people are busy doing their own things, and Gao Cheng is not idle either. In addition to agreeing to help young people, we also need to check the situation on the safe passage side. Be even more careful than before, because once it catches the attention of the infected person in the next room and causes further trouble, Gao Cheng is not sure if this commotion can really calm down. Carefully grasping his movements, Gao Cheng quietly touched the safe passage. Try to avoid the lock hole on the door as much as possible. Now only some of the metal cards are playing their final role in the slot, but it is clearly a bit loose. Fortunately, without attracting the attention of the infected person, Gao Cheng walked smoothly to the safe passage. Sure enough, there were already some gaps on the door, and you could vaguely see the infected person outside. In this situation, Gao Cheng dare not approach, and once he catches the attention of these infected individuals, he doesn't know if he can hold on to this door. So Gao Cheng cautiously retreated back, feeling a bit restless, still underestimating the difficulty of the zombie apocalypse. But as long as you stay quiet, high achievers can do some things appropriately. For example, finding some bed sheets and tying them with ropes at the neighbor's house is the way young people come down. I used to see it frequently in TV dramas, but now I have the opportunity to practice it. I pieced together a few pieces, and even if the young people didn't find them themselves, they probably had enough length. Gao Cheng quickly returned to his room and closed the door again. I don't have time to pay attention to things behind me anymore. It's my responsibility to close the door. After everything was ready, Gao Cheng was idle again. Taking some time to eat, Gao Qinggong began to wait for the young people's contact. The food that could have lasted for a few days now has only 2 days left. With the addition of young people, Gao Cheng had to find more food as soon as possible. As for young people, they ultimately need to find companions, which is Gao Cheng's idea. In the early days of this apocalypse, Gao Cheng became an ordinary person and did not have enough confidence to survive in such a world. Perhaps in the future, Gao Cheng thought a lot more in his boredom. Not long, the communication between the two reconnected. The young man was a bit weak and nervous. I should be around now. Gao Cheng paused for a moment, but didn't rush to urge him. Okay, you can eat something first and store some energy, he said. By the way, please charge the drone's battery. It has been quite a long time since last night. The young man let out a and was really scared of hunger. Plus, the next step will inevitably involve physical labor, so I did not reject Gao Cheng's suggestion. Gao Cheng could hear the hesitation in the tone of a young person, but at this moment, any hint of a negotiable tone would immediately change the young person's mind. So the two of them didn't have much communication next, they just focused on doing their own things. The young man brought down a rope, which was the one with water last night. Gao Cheng sent some food and ropes such as bed sheets that he had prepared before. The rope of the young man is too thin to support his body. That's why Gao Cheng helped. There is a double insurance policy with a high commission, so there shouldn't be any problems in the future. In order to express sincerity and appease the young people, Gao Cheng sent 2 pieces of starch sausage. This thing used to not be a good thing, but in today's post-apocalyptic world where meat is scarce, it can at least satisfy some people's needs in terms of taste. By the time everything was ready and the young people had eaten their fill, it was already noon. The young man handed down 2 ropes again. One of them was prepared by young people themselves, and the other was sent by Gao Cheng, both of which were tied together with curtains and other materials. One is mainly responsible for letting young people grab and pass it down, while the other is responsible for tying it around the young people's waist. Once a young person's physical strength is weak, the rope on their waist can ensure that they will not fall directly downstairs. This is the plan for Gao Cheng and young people. Chapter 8. Convergence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the two of them began to take action, infected individuals slowly began to gather downstairs. At the window on the 13th floor, the young man trembled and leaned out half of his body. There was no use of headphones or other tools for communication, and the distance between them was not very far, just by shouting. Looking at the height downstairs and the gathering of infected individuals, the young man suddenly felt a little nervous. After all, young people are also ordinary people. If it weren't for this disaster, young people would still have a relatively bright future. But now, we have to take risks in order to survive. With some hesitation and a trembling voice, Big Brother, is this okay? If there is someone helping to pull the rope from above, I can still feel a little more at ease. But now it all depends on the young people's own arm strength, and there is also a relatively sturdy furniture in the living room. Fortunately, young people have a thin and weak physique, and during this period, they have also lost a lot of weight while hungry. Although in a state of embarrassment, it can still be barely supported. Gao Cheng is also nervous below. If he falls, it will really be over. It's okay, don't lower your head, take it step by step, Gao Cheng encouraged loudly. I will catch you below, there won't be any problem. The young man swallowed a mouthful of saliva, trembling as he leaned out and slowly handed himself down. Before leaving the windowsill, everything was fine, the ground was relatively hard, and I felt at ease. But when the young man was hanging from the rope, he was like a rootless duckweed, inevitably starting to sway. Even if there is Gao Cheng helping to stretch below, even if young people are trying their best to stabilize their movements. But still trembling. There are trembling sheets that are unstable, as well as trembling young people who are afraid. This kind of incident left young people frozen in place, and the infected individuals gathered below also watched as the two figures emerged, gradually increasing in number. And there has been a phenomenon of climbing. Gao Cheng has seen in movies that when the number of infected individuals increases, one by one, they can climb walls several tens of meters high. Now it is also several tens of meters away from the ground, and the number of infected individuals is not as large as they can be stacked. But it is still dangerous. I always have to find opportunities to go out afterwards, gathering so many infected people downstairs would definitely be a big trouble. Gao Cheng urged, "Hurry up, there will be too many infected people soon, be careful they climb up." The young man's heart trembled and he didn't think if Gao Cheng was lying to him. Even if there is no infected person climbing up, there is still a risk of falling. It has already come out and cannot be retracted. The palm is already hot, and I don't know if it's due to nervousness or friction between the palm and the rope. The young man gritted his teeth and began to move downwards bit by bit. I dare not go too far, each step is just a palm distance. The two legs tried to find balance as much as possible, but it really made the young man rub down bit by bit. Gao Cheng encouraged loudly below, "Yes, that's it. Don't worry, take your time. You can definitely do it." This statement is actually no different from noise in the ears of young people, because they don't have time to be distracted. Fortunately, the process went smoothly, and soon the young people were only one floor away from Gao Cheng. It's just 3 to 5 meters, gritting your teeth, it's not difficult if nothing unexpected happens. But the young people have been sliding all the way, and their hands have already become stiff. The trembling appearance was finally unbearable, and the whole person fell down the rope. With a cry of surprise, a height of several meters was reached in an instant. Gao Cheng has eye disease and quick hands, or in other words, he has already prepared for it. Leaving out half of his body, he pulled the person up. With a clang, the two people fell onto the outer wall of the residential building. Gao Cheng's arm seemed to be broken, although it was only 3 to 5 meters high, it was still the weight of a person. Fortunately, the young man was still tied with a rope around his waist, and Gao Cheng also provided some protection, so he didn't let the two of them fall downstairs in the end. But such a height is not safe, and if there is any problem with the rope, the two of them will only fall in the blink of an eye. So Gao Cheng needs to bring young people up as soon as possible. Gao Cheng's face turned slightly red, and he forced himself to remind him of his discomfort. "Put in more effort, we'll be up soon," he said after finally stabilizing his figure. The young man is also trying to save himself. The infected individuals below have piled up to a height of 2 or 3 meters. Although they cannot reach the floor where the two are located, the sound of sobbing can be felt getting closer and closer. The young man dared not look down and could only do his best to support his legs, with the help of Gao Cheng, gradually climbing towards the position of the window. After a few more minutes of tossing and turning, the two finally fell into Gao Cheng's living room. The sound of clang rang out twice in a row, and both of them looked panting and embarrassed. But after a brief respite, the two of them coincidentally laughed. Especially young people, pay attention to their unrestrained smiles and say, "Ha ha ha, I really did it." The high-achieving grades are older, so the recovery speed is also slower. After the young man vented his emotions recklessly, he slowly got up from the ground. I checked my condition a bit. In fact, neither of them is in good condition. Not to mention their disheveled faces, the impact on the outer wall just now inevitably caused some bumps and injuries on their bodies. While massaging the swelling on his arm, Gao Cheng said, "It must be you young people. If I were to fall, I would definitely fall." Speaking of which, the age difference between the two is not very significant, but reaching the age of 25 or 6 is already considered old in front of young people. Young people are a bit embarrassed. Although they still feel a lot of pain, they are now under someone else's supervision. "Thanks to you, otherwise I would have fallen," he said seriously. She reached out her hand and said, "Let's get to know each other again, Yi Fan. I'll ask you to take care of me from now on." Gao Cheng's response was somewhat awkward and not adapted to the enthusiasm of young people. What kind of social anxiety is his personality? If it weren't for the sake of survival, Gao Cheng really wouldn't want to interact with strangers. Fortunately, young people are not the kind of people who are difficult to socialize with, and the pressure of achieving success is much less. "Taking care of it doesn't count, just work together," he said in agreement. "I happen to have another room available here. You can take a break first. In the afternoon, there is something very important that we need to do. Strengthen the safe passage gate for infected individuals to gather, solve the door lock in the neighboring room that is about to be pried open, and also deal with more than one possible infected person in the room." Chapter 9. First Cooperation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A high-rent house has a standard layout of 1 bedroom, 2 living rooms. I had a roommate before, but when the new round of the epidemic broke out, my roommate also chose to go home. This city used to be the hope of countless people, but reality has defeated many people. If high-achieving jobs do not have a certain degree of freedom, they may also be the same choice in the early stages of the pandemic. Because the pressure of living in the city is not small, countless people yearn for the city, but forget to consider the cost. However, these are all past tense, and now trapped in this residential building, it's hard to say for a moment whether it's good or bad. Yi Fan did not refuse. In fact, he had not rested well before. I hesitated for half a night to get a bottle of water from Gao Cheng, and with all the fuss today, I was already exhausted. Lying on Gao Cheng's roommate's bed, he quickly fell asleep. Gao Cheng didn't disturb him until near evening when Yi Fan got up from bed. The sky is not very dark yet, but Yi Fan's stomach can't bear it anymore. After a few grunts, Gao Cheng has eaten 2 bags of instant noodles and starch sausage that Gao Cheng has kindly sent. Gao Cheng was sitting on the sofa in the living room, staring blankly, like a lifeless corpse. Actually, Gao Cheng has been sitting here for a long time, constantly considering the next steps. How to keep the two alive, and how to establish a foothold in this city full of infected people. Looking at Yi Fan's disheveled appearance, Gao Cheng smiled and asked, "Are you hungry?" Gao Cheng also heard the previous gurgling sound, but in fact, Gao Cheng's situation is not much better. Except for the first day of waking up, Gao Cheng didn't actually eat too much. Just barely keep yourself from starving. After all, food is really scarce, and if you can't go out, you really can't hold on for long. But for Yi Fan, Gao Cheng is a rare presence. I casually brought some food and necessary water. The rest was not hidden, but clearly placed in front of Yi Fan. Yi Fan hesitated a bit and said, "How about saving some time?" Gao Cheng interrupted directly, "There are many things to do next, you'd better fill your stomach as soon as possible. Otherwise, it's very likely to be the last meal." Yi Fan's expression suddenly became frightened, waking up earlier than Gao Cheng, and there was a drone available to use. So Yi Fan has seen more tragedies than Gao Cheng. Knowing the cruelty of this world and being filled with fear towards it is also the reason why Yi Fan dare not leave the room and relies on Gao Cheng. But with Gao Cheng as the main backbone, Yi Fan quickly restrained his thoughts. I hastily ate something, but it only took me a few minutes. The sky hasn't changed significantly yet, so it's always possible to do something during this time. With nervousness and a hint of anticipation, Yi Fan gritted his teeth and said, "What are you going to do next? You can tell me." If it's not a big deal, I don't want this life anymore. I don't want to be so cowardly either. It's not that I suddenly became brave, perhaps because I had companions, or maybe I was really discouraged by the world. Gao Cheng smiled and didn't pay attention to Yi Fan's changes. It's not as troublesome as you think, it's just some physical labor, he said with a relaxed tone as they spoke. The two of them stood up and, after carefully observing the situation outside the door, Gao Cheng once again entered the relatively safe area. It can't be considered relatively safe either. A room door can be knocked open at any time, and the safety passage is not much better. The body of the cleaner in the corridor was still there, and Gao Cheng instinctively looked at Yi Fan, wanting to see his reaction. Fortunately, it was not the first time Yi Fan had seen this corpse. Apart from his pale face, there was actually no major problem. Gao Cheng walked out of the room and whispered, "You stay here and keep an eye on me. If there's any disturbance, just remind me in a timely manner." Yi Fan was a bit scared, but gritted his teeth and said, "I know." Gao Cheng paused for a moment and handed the wrench in his hand to Yi Fan. The only risk is that when something really happens, Yi Fan will lock himself outside the door, but fortunately, there are still a few rooms in the neighbor's house where there is room for retreat. However, it is highly unlikely that this situation will occur. Gao Cheng's thoughts paused for a moment, but in the end, he couldn't guarantee it. He silently recited the words "hope" in his heart. I walked into my neighbor's room again, still looking familiar, but this time Gao Cheng was more relaxed. The purpose of this trip is not to collect supplies, but to find furniture that can block the safe passage. The body size should be large enough and not easily pushed down. Sofas, wardrobes, and the like are all acceptable, but relative practicality should also be considered. They should not be too heavy, and it is best not to attract the attention of infected individuals during transportation. Quickly, the high achievement hit the right goal. A table, not too big, but it should be able to temporarily block the door over the safe passage. As long as the infected person in the room is dealt with first, there will be plenty of time to deal with the risk of safe passage later on. What I'm afraid of now is that during the time of opening the door to deal with infected individuals, the safe passage may be knocked open. Too many infected people rushed in at once, and Gao Cheng couldn't bear it. "Come and help me." At this moment, Yi Fan was a bit nervous, looking intently in the direction of the corridor. Although there was no movement, the unknown fear still made Yi Fan's palms sweat uncontrollably. Gao Cheng's voice startled Yi Fan, but fortunately, with psychological preparation, Yi Fan quickly reacted. Hurriedly replied, "Here we are." The wrench, stained with blood, returned to Gao Cheng's hand and was then pinned to his waist by him. Two people lifted the table and walked step by step towards the safe passage. The table is actually not big, and after a rough estimate, it should just be able to hold on to the walls on both sides. This way, after the door is knocked open, there is still room for improvement. As long as the door is not opened, the infected person cannot rush in, making it easy to say anything. The two carefully bypassed the fallen body and quickly walked to the room where the infected person was hiding. Through the hole in the door lock, one can still see the figure of the infected person. Just because there was no movement, the infected person stood there dumbfounded. At least it lasted for a day, but the infected person was completely unaware of exhaustion. Because he had to pay attention to the movements of the infected person, Gao Cheng was a bit distracted. But at this moment, Yi Fan's voice was a bit nervous as he said, "Well, could you wait a moment? I'm a bit." With a snap, a corner of the table hit the ground. Although the young man quickly lifted the table again, with such a slight movement, the infected person had already been startled. At such a close distance, the presence of Gao Cheng and Yi Fan was clearly noticeable. The next moment, a frantic tapping sound sounded, and the shaky door immediately shook. Chapter 10. Temporary Safety. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Speed up a bit, Gao Cheng hurriedly urged. The noise on this side becomes loud, and the safety passage is no longer safe. Moreover, the situation on both sides is not very good, and it is uncertain which side will have the problem first. Yi Fan's expression instantly became tense, wanting to say something, but he was constantly moving forward with the increasing speed of Gao Cheng. The table was originally not big, and it wasn't too heavy. If there weren't those concerns, moving to the door wouldn't be a problem. But now the situation is like this: as the two of them turn the corner, the movement on both sides has become increasingly restless. You can see that the door on the safe passage has been knocked open, and more than one infected person is frantically trying to break in. Fortunately, there is still the constraint of the rope, and although the gap is not small, it is not enough for the infected person to enter. As long as the table can be lifted in time, it can temporarily block the infected people from behind. But in the midst of this moment, with a loud bang, the door with the broken lock was completely knocked open. Yi Fan's expression became fearful, it was truly fearful. The infected person rushed out, those guys who would hysterically launch attacks when they saw all living creatures. Gao Cheng. Gao Cheng's voice rang out simultaneously, "You push the table over there, I'll handle it over there." While speaking, Gao Cheng had already crawled over the table. Passing over Yi Fan, I rushed straight past the corner. Yi Fan pushed the table and looked at the wildly shaking entrance of the passage. An infected person had already reached out their arm. I can't see the situation on Gao Cheng's side, but Yi Fan knows what he should do. With a grit of his teeth, he forcefully pushed the table towards the door and collided with it. The four legs of the table made a piercing sound on the ground, but compared to the infected individuals exposed through the crack in the door, these piercing sounds were not as uncomfortable. With a clang, the table was slammed hard against the door. The gap that was pushed open instantly closed, and the infected person was tightly blocked outside. But it didn't end there. Gao Cheng didn't share his thoughts with Yi Fan, and Yi Fan's mind couldn't turn around due to nervousness. He could only hold on to the table for a while. Use your own body and strength to resist the push of an unknown infected person behind the door. Time passed slowly, and every breath was clearly transmitted to Yi Fan's ears. Yi Fan stared fixedly in the direction of the corner, fantasizing about the scene of infected people rushing towards him in the next moment. But this is not the first time that Gao Cheng has faced an infected person. After a while, Gao Cheng's figure appeared and the blood on the wrench became brighter. This infected person is an adult male, about the same age as Gao Chengxiang. But it's not as difficult to deal with as the cleaners I've encountered before. Because the man has a very serious wound on his leg and a fracture. So the movement speed is very slow, but for Gao Cheng, who has psychological preparation and experience, there is no threat. By the time Gao Cheng resolved the infection and returned to the corner, Yi Fan's face had turned completely pale. Trembling, he said the words, "Big brother," and collapsed on the ground, feeling sore and weak. The psychological pressure is too great, and there are signs that the door behind me has been pushed open again. Fortunately, there were ropes that had been reinforced before Gao Cheng, as well as the table that Yi Fan was standing on top of the door. Gao Cheng hurriedly stepped forward and cooperated with Yi Fan to flip the table over. Supported on both sides of the wall, the excess part is forced into it, giving rise to the function of a stopper. The infected person's movements have not stopped yet, but it is no longer as easy to push the door open as before. Has it been resolved? Yi Fan was a bit nervous. Gao Cheng let out a and gestured for Yi Fan to speak softly. As the two of them quieted down, the infected person gradually lost their target. After more than 10 minutes, the sky became much darker again. The infected person may walk away, but also may unconsciously whimper. Gao Cheng greeted Yi Fan and led him back to the corridor. Now there are two infected individuals lying here, both using the same method of death. They were hit hard on the head and their entire heads collapsed. "It should be safe now," Yi Fan said with some fear. "I'm afraid not yet," said Gao Cheng in a low voice as he spoke. He led Yi Fan over the corpse and into the room where the door had just been pried open. There may also be an infected person hidden here, so Gao Cheng's actions are very careful. Keep Yi Fan behind to prevent any losses caused by the sudden outbreak of infected individuals. However, there is a high probability that there will be no problem, as there was such a lot of noise during the lock prying process before, and it took a long time for the infected person to rush out. If there are still infected individuals, their condition should not be much better. Sure enough, on the sofa in the living room, a body was already in tattered condition. It's strange that there's no smell of decay. I don't know if it was overshadowed by the scent of those infected individuals or for some other reason. Yi Fan frowned slightly, because the appearance of the corpse was indeed somewhat disgusting. More disgusting than the two infected individuals lying in the hallway. There is a large piece of flesh missing from the neck of the corpse, which is clearly a sign of being bitten by an infected person. The room also has a layout of 2 bedrooms and 1 living room, one of which has obvious signs of damage. It should be the person on the sofa who locked the infected person into the room before dying, but ultimately failed to save themselves. Subsequently, the 2 of them conducted a general examination in the room and found no other infected individuals present. So temporarily, the 2 of them are safe again. It's really unfortunate. Yi Fan, relaxed, can't help roast, but Gao Cheng is not so relaxed. With a serious attitude, he said, "You have also seen the situation on the safe passage side. It's best for you to adapt to the current pace as soon as possible. Otherwise..." Gao Cheng's words were not very harsh, but Yi Fan's performance today was indeed somewhat unsatisfactory. Yi Fan opened his mouth to defend something, but in the end, he said somewhat helplessly, "I will adapt as soon as possible." Even worse, one must have the courage to resist when facing danger, just like when Gao Cheng first faced an infected person. If Gao Cheng at that time were like Yi Fan today, I'm afraid there would have been no chance for anything to happen later. Gao Cheng did not take this matter seriously, there are still many things to do. Before the sun completely set, Gao Cheng and Yi Fan completed the reinforcement of the safety passage. I also collected some supplies from the room where the door lock was newly pried open. There is some water, but not a lot to eat. After it was completely dark, the 2 of them had already returned to their room. The door was locked, and the 2 of them slowly relaxed. Watching the food that was finally found, Yi Fan felt a bit confused for a moment. What should we do next? There are only 2 rooms left where we can collect food. In the future, will we have to fight all the way out with so many infected people?